Have you ever woke up in the middle of a dream and the dream was so interesting that you wanted to go back to sleep to see the end of it? If so, what was the dream? 1. I used to have lucid dreams in my early to mid-20s. As soon as I realized I was asleep, I'd start flying or rising to the ceiling because it was a cool way to test it. Then my immediate thought would be, who should I pretend sleep with? And the excitement over that possibility woke me up every damn time. 2. I had a nightmare a couple off years back, and I still remember some bits. I was in a city where there was an outbreak of a disease. Infected people would start leaking black stuff from their eyes and noses and attack non-infected people. For some reason, I was walking in a part of the city that was completely deserted a couple days after the outbreak. Very faintly I heard someone crying. I approached and found out that it came from a backyard. If I wanted to see who it was, I had to climb a high fence. When I walked into the backyard I was fucking horrified. There was a crying little kid, like 3 years old on a leash, tied to a pole. I didn't dare to approach, because that child was leaking Valk stuff from the nose. I woke up after this, and was still horrified. The parents had to leave their child who was still alive, chained to a pole outside. That fucked me up for a couple of days. 3. When I wake up in the morning, I usually have 30 more minutes before I have to get out of bed. If I'm having a dream before I wake up and I go back to sleep, I can usually continue the dream. Last night, I had a dream that I was in some kind of resort or Jurassic Park-like area. I went back to sleep this morning and got into a relationship with a pretty hot dude working at the resort. 4. I dreamt that I was part of some Eastern European resistance movement who had to speak in code and hide out in abandoned manors in the forest to plan our attacks against some fascist regime. We enlisted the Pope to help us, but when we went to meet him he double-crossed us because the regime we were fighting somehow knew the Pope was gay and was going to tell everyone. I woke up then, not knowing if my resistance group had been executed or if we escaped somehow. I call it my gay Pope dream. 5. I learned I could fly, but I had to teach myself. Woke up right as I was gearing up for the big test to see how high I could go. Forced myself back to sleep, and let me tell you flying in a dream is way too fucking fun. 6. I once dreamt that my family and closest friends were on the world's largest cruise ship. Along the way, we somehow were exposed to radioactive waste that gave us all superpowers or other mutations. I remember so vividly being able to use my mind to move objects easily, and I threw donuts at my brother, whose skin had turned as hard as stone. This one girl on the cruise that we all universally hated received a random and useless mutation. She grew a fat lizard tail, like a leopard gecko who has eaten a lot lol. She was crying about how ugly she was now. All we could do was laugh. Then I woke up. 7. A long time ago, I dreamed that ghosts were living in my family's garage. Nowhere else, just the garage. I somehow became friends with one, but she was unable to speak to me, leave the property that the house was on, and wasn't able to show any facial expressions that wouldn't be considered terrifying. My ghost friend and I were playing on the house porch, and 2 guys were trying to break into the house. She tried to stop them by scaring the living heck out of them by making a terrifying face and screaming the most blood-curdling scream ever right in their faces. I couldn't see the face she made, but I somehow knew it was there, and all I could hear was the scream. The people trying to rob the house ran off, but instead of celebrating, I curled up and started crying because of how terrifying the scream was. I loved that ghost and forgot that her whole purpose was to scare people, but she did it to protect me and the house. I still cried, though, and she tried to cheer me up the best way she could. Then I woke up. I knew that was a dream, but I didn't want to leave my ghost friend alone, knowing the last time she saw me was when she scared me to tears by accident. I tried to go back to sleep, and I did, and I successfully re-entered the dream, only it was several years in the future. The garage still had a couple of ghosts, but not nearly as much, and the rest seemed oblivious to humans. I was going into the attic and found some pictures in there of me around the age I was friends with the ghost, and in the picture I saw a very faint image of her face standing next to me. I went down to the attic and woke up. I didn't get to tell the ghost that I forgave her or anything, and I still feel some sort of emotional attachment to her. It was probably the best nightmare I've ever had, and one of the dreams I've wanted to go back to the most so that I can tell her that there are no hard feelings.